Hello everyone, my name's Matt Johnston and this show is called The Interesting Times. It's a political comedy show from the UK. Yes, we are back. Well, I am. Having been away for the last 4 weeks, what have we missed? Well, let's see. The Conservative Party continued their slide to irrelevance as while the country was reeling with the Conservative-driven cost of living crisis, the Shadow Secretary of State for Justice, Robert Jenrick, whose party filled the prisons to bursting and allowed court cases to be backed up so that even the most serious cases would sometimes take a year to be heard, decided it was time to tackle the real problem facing people in this country. Fare dodgers on the London Underground.
Excuse me, do you think it's all right not to pay? Seriously, why do you go back through the barrier and pay? Do you want to go back and pay like everybody else? With bike theft, phone theft, tool theft, shoplifting, drugs in town centres, weird Turkish barber shops, it's all chipping away at society. The state needs to reassert itself and go after lawbreakers.
Ah yes, the superhero we didn't ask for. Twat man! Then tongue-twisted twonk and shadow leader of the House, Chris Philp, went a stage further and spoilt a party. Let's be honest, not for the first time.
Hi, my name is Chris. I'm a Member of Parliament here in the UK. Would you like to learn a bit about what you're doing here and what's going on? How come you're living here?
Not speak English.
Yeah, I was interested in just finding out what the story is here. How come you're living here in tents?
Go!
Take it easy.
The Titanic tips up Tory turmoil, though, was as nothing compared to the captains of chaos over at Reform, the party that never stops picking fights with people, be they trans, peaceful protesters, anyone not white, women and themselves. Having come into power only just last year with 5 MPs, many, to be fair, not me, were excited about what this newly named party was going to do. Well, the first thing they did was have a falling out, and the chairman, Ben Habib, left. Then another falling out, and one of their MPs, Rupert Lowe, left, which brought them down to 4 MPs. They then won a by-election, which brought them back up to 5 MPs. Then the new chairman, Zia Youssef, left for 24 hours and came back. Then another MP, James McMurdoch, resigned the whip and left the party because of dodgy business dealings during COVID. And they're back down to 4. Not so much the insurgent party, a more far-right, okey-dokey, knees bent, arms stretched. All right, yep, that's enough of that. So, 5 MPs down to 4 MPs, up to 5 MPs, and now down to 4 MPs again. A revolving door for the chairman and a party leader that spends less time in his Clacton constituency than I do. Oh, and all the polls seem to suggest that they're going to form our next government. Good news if you're a political comedy channel. Bad news if you're a Brit. And then, of course, there is the Labour government, who, having found a £22 billion black hole in the finances, decided the best thing to do was borrow more money and spend like it's our last day on earth. I mean, how bad are our finances? Let me put it this way. This is Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. She's seen the books. Oh, and then there's been a couple of bills being passed through. The assisted dying bill, which, if passed, will allow individuals to receive a life-ending medication from a doctor, provided they have less than 6 months to live and are in extreme pain. And then there's the welfare bill, which will have taken away help from some of the most vulnerable in society and likely push some 250,000 people into poverty by taking away desperately needed financial support. A bill so bad the Conservatives supported it. Thankfully, a lot of the Labour Party didn't. And now it's been watered down, so only 50,000 people are going to be thrown to the wolves. Well, that's all right then. So the main question I will be asking in this video is this. Are we broke? And by we, I mean the UK, and by broke, I mean are we down to our last penny? So, are we broke? And who's to blame? And what can we do about it? First question then, is UK PLC broke? Well, no. See, as a country, we can't really go broke. So that's the first one ticked off then. Whew, this is going to be a shorter video than I anticipated. However, Having higher borrowing can create problems such as increased interest rates, slower economic growth, and the possibility of a weakened pound, meaning less public investment. But put simply, no matter what the press tell you, it isn't possible for the UK to go bankrupt. I mean, how would that even work? Would the bailiffs be called, locks being changed while the flat screen TV is being carried out? Will we then have to make an appointment to speak to the CAB, the country's advice bureau? So no, the country isn't going bankrupt. Next question. Who's to blame for this? Boris Johnson. It's Boris Johnson. Him. Boris Johnson. Really? Give me a B. Give me an Boris Johnson. So, moving on. All right, yes, apparently I have to show my workings now. So here we go. Back in 2015, the GDP for the country was 2.2%. Then in 2016, this dropped down to 1.9%. Why? Because Bozo the Clown came to town.
I will be advocating vote leave or whatever the team is called. I understand there are many of them. I think that is basically because I want a better deal for the people of this country, to save them money and to take back control.
A man short on ideas and planning, but long on hyperbole and comedy, strode confidently into town and promised the British people an economic paradise if we voted to leave the EU. And people believed him. Until it was too late and they discovered he was less Winston Churchill and more Del Boy with a bad hair day. He then saw the mess he made and did what any selfish, disrespectful degenerate would do and left someone else to clear it up. The fact that Brexit since leaving has cost the UK economy around £30 billion a year, or just over an annual black hole, tells you just where the problem started, but not where it stopped. Johnson then complained and moaned from the sidelines about the bad job Theresa May was doing with his Brexit. Put simply, he shit the bed and complained about the smell. Then in 2019, Theresa May said, you know what? What the bloody hell am I dealing with this? Why don't I just do what the Conservative men do and quit? So the country needed a new leader and Boris Johnson had nowhere else to run. And let's be honest, he wasn't really a fan of running anyway. So in 2019, he became the new leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister. Now, if you know one thing about Johnson, he doesn't like work. Not a fan. I mean, he's got 7 kids because he couldn't be asked to put on a condom, for goodness sake. So when it came to negotiating a deal with the EU, he just copied Theresa May's deal, the one that he hated, and then told everyone it was great and forgot to mention it was only for a year for the transition of leaving the EU. Oops. So, all that hard graft of having to turn up to work downstairs from where you lived meant Johnson needed a break. He went on holiday during January in 2020 and failed to attend 5 Cobra emergency meetings, all of which would have made him acutely aware that there was a pandemic heading this way. And yet his answer was the same as we saw with Brexit. Project Fear.
No, well, Victoria, I can tell you that I'm shaking hands continuously. I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody.
Yeah, Project Fear. Easier to dismiss it than to think about it. It would be Wednesday, March the 16th, 2.5 months after the first reported cases in China, that Johnson would advise the nation to avoid restaurants and bars, and another week after that, before the first lockdown. The human cost of this man's laziness is a story for another time when my blood pressure can handle it. But there was financial cost too. Lack of PPE meant the government was either paying over inflated prices for a worldwide shortage or paying money to friends in the cabinet or sometimes to completely non-existent companies, totaling a cost of £15 billion wasted. Then there was the staggeringly inept track and trace app in which the government handed over a further £37 billion, further estimated fraud which was written off by the next donut to take the top job at £4.3 billion, To be fair to Johnson, some of these costs were inevitable, but his lack of planning or understanding of the threat COVID represented at a conservative estimate, which means it's probably wrong, but at the lower end, that alone would cost the country close to £50 billion. And no, I haven't even taken into account lost GDP. Add to that Brexit at approximately £32 billion a year, meaning for the 3 years he was in power, Johnson managed to lose the country nearly £1.5 million for every day he was in power, which is bad. I appreciate not as bad as the other blonde idiot who lost nearly 1,000 times more than that while she was there. But she was only there because they had a leadership election. And they had a leadership election because Johnson tried to cover for a sexual predator. And he treats the public's money worse than his own. And bearing in mind, he's probably one missed alimony payment away from a Big Brother appearance. That's not good. So Johnson total cost the UK at least £160 billion. Liz Truss another £30 billion. But apparently that's not the message being put out there.
But having a bad day, a bad week is not a cause for making a lifestyle choice to claim anxiety and claim benefits.
You earn more sitting on your backside than going to work in Benefits Britain.
And there's far more young people who have contributed almost 50% flat tax at this point.
Some young people should get off their arse and get a job, shouldn't they?
Yeah, sympathy's in short supply when you're poor. By the way, Richard Tice, the only people that use the term lifestyle choices are those that can afford one. And the why don't the young people get off their lazy arse and get a job guy? He's got 75 properties, as has this guy.
So how many properties are in your portfolio?
Well, my personal portfolio, I'd rather not say.
Of course you don't. Why would you? I mean, laying out your income for all to see is only something that should happen to the poor, right? And then there was this.
Food intolerances are a medical fact, but they're not something we should be handing out new cars for. This is not a joke.
No, the joke happened when we gave you lot the keys to run the country. So, the story that brand new cars are given out to those with food intolerances was started by the Guido Fawkes website. And the man behind it, a Mr. Staines. Yeah, it was then picked up and run with by the country's shame, our national press. And ended up where all these things end up, in the bin that is Conservative Party policy. So, strap yourselves in, because you may be amazed, shocked even, to hear Kemi's not telling the full story. So, the Motability Scheme is a scheme whereby those with ailments or receiving benefits can hire a motability vehicle at a reduced rate. Nobody's handing out cars. That's the first thing. Also, there are nearly 590,000 people who have gotten a car through the scheme, of which 20 are those with food intolerances. Also, if you have a food intolerance, that in turn can lead to other complications like irritable bowel syndrome, something I get when she comes on the TV. So we know what they consider to be the answer. But could there be another way?
No, you wouldn't have to touch assets of under 6 or 7 million, so people's houses would be secure, obviously. But even by going for an imposition of 2% on asset values above 10 million, say, which is a very big fortune, the government would be in a position to collect 10 or 11 billion a year.
Seems fairly straightforward. If you want money, the first people you go to are the rich, right?
The British, particularly the British left, continue with this conceit that all extra welfare spending can be paid for just taxing the rich.
Then it does very much seem like people who are hard workers like me just happen to have ordinary jobs in the city. We're the people that are going to be targeted as well.
Wealth taxes have a history of dismal failure. And why is that? It's because several reasons. One is that the political economy, the reality is that you need exemptions in these taxes to make them work, and they are ruthlessly exploited. The other is that you're taxing something which is very mobile, very rich people.
I'm sorry. I just have to jump in there. These are all really rather strange arguments. We know that paying taxes are a good way to support various institutions that you need to run a country, and we know that because that's what we've been doing for thousands of years. And we also know that it's fairer when these taxes are proportionate. And then, of course, there's this argument.
The ones that have got yachts, they can sail out of here tomorrow. You won't see them again and you won't get any tax off them. If you penalise people too much, tax-wise, they're the ones that create wealth. And if you get rid of them and they're leaving in droves, I've got a number of friends of mine who have left the country. I'm not going to, but they have. Then you're going to have a problem because you won't get the tax you think you're going to get.
But all the stats show there is no mass exodus. The proportion of millionaires leaving the country since 2013 has been about 0.3% each year, which kind of makes sense. If your home, where your kids go to school, your work, your friends, and your social life is all in this country, you've got to ask, what sort of weirdo would just up sticks and leave because of a Labour government that may only last 5 years? Also, it seems strange to say it won't work because it doesn't raise that much money because people find loopholes. It just makes me want to say, well, close those bloody loopholes then. Or what the hell, don't have a wealth tax and just close the loopholes we already have that allow some nearly £50 billion to not be collected every year. 10% of that will cover those who rely on benefits. I guess what I'm saying is it's okay to be rich, but it's not okay to be rich and then when asked to pay your fair share, start to go after fare dodgers or random brown people living in tents or relay inaccurate and poorly researched theories that manipulate information to blame those that didn't campaign for Brexit, like this guy. Or not bother to prepare for a pandemic, like this guy. Or stick a bomb under the economy, like this woman. Or talk about taking money from poor constituencies that don't vote Tory, like this guy, whom, by the way, has now also become a senior advisor to Goldman Sachs. But to be fair to him, he at least will give his salary to charity. Oh, that's nice. Which charity, you ask? The Richmond Project. And for all you cynics out there saying, oh yeah, is it a charity for all those in the UK who can only afford one helicopter? No, actually, you're wrong. It's a charity that helps those that struggle with numeracy in the UK, which was set up by Rishi Sunak and his wife. Oh well, charity really does begin at home, I guess. Right, well, allow me to make a contribution, Mr. Sunak. You have £5 billion welfare bill in one hand and £50 billion tax contributions slipping through your fingers in the other hand. Which hand should you close first? And that's it. No time to talk about former MasterChef judge and sex case cockney Gregg Wallace, who has apparently been dropped by the BBC after many allegations of inappropriate behaviour, including groping his co-workers and dropping his trousers. Having previously blamed this behaviour on women of a certain age, he's now blaming it on his autism, which is clearly crap. What's next? Is he going to be blaming it on his bald head or glasses? No time to talk about the ridiculously hot summer we've been having so far, which shows no sign of stopping, with temperatures last week getting close to 35 degrees. Weather warnings have been issued across the country.
Staying with that hot weather, the first hosepipe ban of the year is in place. It's in Yorkshire.
A hosepipe ban in Yorkshire, which means there's been no rain in Yorkshire. It is hot. How hot is it? It's so hot that the ice cream vans are now only selling cream. It's so hot that the chickens are laying omelettes. It's so hot that I'm sweating like a sitting president waiting for the release of the Epstein files. It is so hot that parts of the world have seen a dramatic increase in flash flooding leading to hundreds of deaths and cars literally being carried by rivers that have burst their banks here in Europe. It is so hot that parts of the world as we know it are burning while unqualified populist politicians tell us all it's a hoax, and only when we're floating on an ever-shrinking rock in the Atlantic will we consider maybe, just maybe, the scientists had a point. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you have enjoyed this video, then please do feel free to like, share, subscribe, comment, and hit all the notifications tab. And I'll see you all soon. Take care.